Hello, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, where we've returned to the mystery of August 16th, 1977, as we follow our fictional fan Joyce in Memphis as she tries to solve the mystery of what happened at Graceland on August 16th, 1977. It's actually August 17th, 1977. We've been through almost an entire day, and in the last episode, we saw Sonny West and Dave Hebler give a conference on television where they explained why they wrote the book, Elvis, What Happened. And we've just about completely wrapped up that story, got just a few more things to go over on it, and then we'll get into today's story about Elvis's Black Hole Sun. Hi, Colleen. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Hi, Jane. Appreciate seeing you here too. And hi, Terry. It's good to see you. So I don't know if any of you ever heard the Soundgarden song Black Hole Sun, but times are gone for honest men. And that's kind of what we saw when we looked at the conference of Dave Hebler and Sonny West. And so now we're going to look at some statements that Sonny West made in 2007 during an interview. And they kind of wrap up everything that we've talked about. And they, I believe, show that what we found to be true in the articles and the conference that we went over, I believe this lends credibility to all of that. So let me go ahead and get right into that. And they asked Sonny, basically, how did you feel about getting terminated? And he said, and they asked, how did you and Red and Dave feel? So he kind of answered for all of them and said, our reaction at first was hurt, then anger, that he would tell his father to fire us because of a cutback on expenses. Well, Elvis left town, so we couldn't go to him and ask the real reason, which we already knew. But we wanted to hear him say it. Because we had no access to him, the only way we felt we could reach him was to write. So here in this answer, in 2007, which is, I believe, 30 years later, Sonny says that he was hurt when he got terminated. Well, we would expect that. That'd be true of just about anybody that got terminated. They'd feel hurt. And then he felt anger. And he felt anger at Elvis, that Elvis would have Vernon terminate them. Even though Vernon wrote the checks, even though Vernon was running the business, they felt it was a slight not to be terminated directly by Elvis, but I'm sure it had more to do with than just that. But the important part is that there was anger. And we've been saying since the beginning, all of us, I believe, found that they had great anger when they wrote the book. And that was one of the major reasons for writing the book. And he also indicates that a cutback on expenses is a fake reason, which he also stated during the conference. So 30 years later, saying the exact same thing, which we already knew. We know that that's a fake reason. That's the truth. That's not the reason he was let go. And they're angry that he's angry that he could not ask Elvis directly the real reason. But then he says he already knows the real reason. So I made a big point of this during a previous live, that these three gentlemen already knew why they got terminated. You know, they knew it was coming. They knew exactly what it was for. It wasn't a surprise to them. And he's confirming that right here. He knew the real reason that he got fired. He didn't need Elvis to tell him. He didn't even want Elvis to tell him. He wanted a confrontation, which is exactly what Dave wanted and why Dave went to a place where Elvis was supposed to be to try to catch him there so that he could have a confrontation. So then they ask, well, hi, chillin' in Canada. Good to see you. I'm not positive I've seen you in here on the lives before, but I think I have seen you comment on some videos. So thank you very much for coming. Or maybe you were in here yesterday, like right at the end. Can't remember exactly, but welcome anyway. Back to this article, though. They then ask, him, you decided to write the book, but why did you do it? Even though he kind of already answered this. And he says, because we had no access to him. The only way we felt we could reach out to him was to write a book to show him what he had done and was doing to those who loved him. It had to be truthful and had to get his attention. So that's odd, because he said during the conference that the book was both truthful and not truthful, because Steve Dunleavy had sensationalized the whole thing. So it didn't actually reflect the way that the three felt, which to me would mean it's not truthful, even though there are true parts of it. But here he's saying that the intention was to write a truthful one. And if that didn't work, they were going to lose him. Well, they didn't write a truthful book, according to him. So maybe they did lose him due to that. But again, that didn't really have anything to do with it, I don't think. And if he did not recognize the truth in the book as being just that, he would deny it like he denied he had a prescription drug problem and just continue down that path of destruction. So again, Sonny does not give Elvis any leeway for the fact that he may actually be experiencing pain. So to me, even though Sonny would know the medical things that Elvis had been through, because Sonny himself was not sick at the time, and I think that's a common thing, he's not sick. He really can't see Elvis as sick because they're like the same age. And Elvis isn't acting very sick because he uses the drugs to control a lot of the pain. But he's obviously acting differently than he used to, and Sonny has noticed that, but he's not willing to say that Elvis needs the drugs for any reason, even though they are all prescription. So he's basically saying that the doctors, all the doctors, are complicit in this drug problem. And then he says he got very mad at us for doing the book, which we fully expected, and even tried to buy us off not to do it. So I think he's referring to the phone call, which if you haven't ever heard the phone call, I think Terry's got it up on his channel, Elvis History, so you could go hear it. It was recorded without Elvis's knowledge, and I don't ever hear him in there try to buy them off, but I believe that there were he's also referring to like a phone call that the lawyer for Elvis made, telling him that money was not an issue, but I think he was speaking to Red. Again, I don't really know that, so talking off the top of my head there, but I think that's what he's referring to. And if we had agreed to do that, we would have been no better than the doctors who were giving him whatever he wanted in medications. So now Sonny states it clearly that the doctors are in a conspiracy with Elvis to provide Elvis with medications. That this is not for Elvis's health. That's basically what he's telling us. The people out there that disagree with us writing the book, referring to us with words I won't write in this interview, should maybe think, what if it had worked? So I don't think there's any chance this book could have worked, but I also agree that nobody should have been referring to anyone with words that Sonny couldn't write in an interview. And that also tells us that this interview was not face-to-face. They sent him questions, and then he wrote the answers and sent them. So these are not oral answers. These are words that he has thought about and he has written. So this isn't like when we saw him in the conference. He's thought about this, and of course he's been thinking about it for 30 years. And then he says, what if Elvis had taken our challenge and stopped them and recovered? what would they call us then? So 30 years later, Sonny's not willing to admit that Elvis had any health issues, even though there was an autopsy that showed that he had all these enlarged organs. Sonny's still saying could have been saved if he just stopped the drugs. Well, that doesn't appear to medically be true. I know what Elvis would have called us if we contributed to getting him off the prescription drugs and saving his life. Very good friends. And maybe he would have, but again, I don't think that if Elvis had stopped the drugs cold turkey, that would have saved him. But it would have brought him a lot of pain, a massive amount of pain. And Jane's saying that Sonny was bitter because they got rid of him. And it's more than that, Jane. They did something. These three guys, before they got terminated, they did something, and it broke the trust. Whatever it was, Elvis could no longer view them as loyal, and that's why he terminated them. Now, we don't know what they did. Sonny's referred to it. He says he knows the real reason. He knows what he did, and he knows that it broke the trust, and he knows that he was disloyal. But he's still upset that he was terminated. And so he is bitter, but it's a bitterness that extends to before the termination, to whatever it was that was that event. That's where everything stems from, but we never see that event covered. It's not in any books. It's not out there, but it's the key to the whole situation. And then this guy asked, you have said that you regretted how the book came out in the end and why. And Sonny says, what I meant by that was the way it seemed to tell all the incidents we told to the writer without the concern and love we felt for him. So they told Steve Dunleavy some stuff, and he wrote the bald facts of it. And when you just see the bald facts, it turns out maybe somebody shouldn't have told that story. That even though the story was true, unless you write it yourself and make sure it gets out there the way you want it, it's a very easily misconstrued story, and that's the way Steve wrote it. And Jane saying that they were heavy-handed with the fans. Yes, I do agree with that, Jane. They were heavy-handed, but I also believe it went further than that. I don't think that was just it. I think that was an outward sign of what was going on. Hi, Mary. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate seeing you here. And so Sonny also goes on to say, when we read the manuscript for proofreading, we went through it quickly and didn't check that fact. So that's an interesting statement too. They were sent a manuscript. They apparently had some say about what was in the manuscript, because proofreading means you could say this isn't accurate. You can't print it this way. You could have put up a stink. Apparently they had some kind of approval, that had to get through. But they didn't check that fact, which was the whole book. I mean, the entire book was that fact that he's referring to. So they didn't read the manuscript. They just took their money. They had probably gotten their money at the end of the 300 hours in September. And they've been spending their money. And now they got this manuscript and they're like, print what you want. And now they're upset that whatever came out isn't what they wanted. So here, I think Sonny tells us that the three of them are highly responsible for the information that came out in that book. It wasn't Steve. Yes, Steve wrote it, but the Ballantyne guys forced him to rewrite it because lots of it wasn't true. And these three guys are saying they had that same opportunity. They didn't take it. So when they could have protected Elvis, they did not do it. Of course, when we got our advance copies of it a few weeks before it was released and I read it again, I did notice the writing style, but it was too late to change it. So here he says that he got the copy and he read it again. Well, he just told us he didn't read the first copy. So this is a lie. He did not read it again. He read it for the first time, and probably not all of it. But he did notice that there were things in it that he didn't like, but it was too late to change. So now he could say, nothing I could do about it, not my fault. But the biggest regret I had about the book was that it didn't do what we were hoping and wanting it to do. Well, it may have sent Elvis to an early grave, so I'm not sure that it didn't do what they wanted it to do, because the timing of it is very suspect with his actual demise, and Sonny was giving an interview possibly at the very moment that Elvis passed away about this book, stating the things again that he's stating here. He thought maybe Steve shouldn't have said. And then he goes on, get him to stop what he was doing to himself and get help to get off the prescription drugs he was abusing. So I don't know who Sonny thought would help him, because he's already said that doctors weren't helping, that they were just complicit. So was the expectation that they would find a different doctor, a doctor who wasn't doing this? Because he had multiple doctors and apparently they all did it, according to Sonny. And then he's asked another question here. Do you think that some parts of the book came out too much exaggerated by Steve Dunleavy? And he answers, I don't know if exaggeration is the correct word, though it was in a sensationalistic style. So Sonny's agreeing that the things that are in the book are true. But the problem I had with it was the lack of our emotions coming through in his writing style, which was because he was a writer for The Star, a tabloid publication. So he blames the fact that his emotions aren't in the book on Steve the writer, but we also know he had the opportunity to review the manuscript. And then he says there were numerous passages that gave the wrong interpretation because of his writing style. So again, he enumerates exactly where he could have made a difference in the manuscript, but he didn't do it. And then Chillin' in Canada says, I heard of the story of the three reading it while sitting on the curb with boxes of books, but never heard the proofreading story before. Yeah, because apparently they didn't read the proof. So there's no story, but I understand what you're saying, Chillin'. And yes, I hadn't really caught it till we were reading this either. I'm catching a lot as we read carefully through these together. And Roy, welcome, Roy. Thank you for coming. Appreciate having you here. Roy says they wrote the book to make money, bottom line. Everybody involved the book, it was out to make money. I agree with that, Roy, but they also wanted to hurt Elvis. I think their number one goal, maybe number two, was to hurt Elvis. One might have been to get the money. I think there's a good argument to be made. One of those was number one and number two, and it could go either way, but they definitely wanted to hurt Elvis. And Jane's saying that Elvis was very stressed at the time because of his illness and the book and the lean on Graceland. So yeah, he had a lot of stress on him all the time. And these guys knew it, and they didn't help anything. They were really thinking about themselves. Now, I'm not saying that these guys were bad people. Good time to put in my disclaimer. This is a show for entertainment purposes only. I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm just a guy that's sitting here reading with you the various articles that I find, and looking at different media sources, including television and radio, so that we can get the real picture of what happened on August 16th, 1977. And back to the show. Do you know if Elvis ever read the book? He asked Sonny. And Sonny says, I don't know if he read the book, but I know he was reading the manuscript as it was being written. So that basically means he read the book, right? He was getting a copy of it as it was actually being transcribed from tape to print. Now, how does Sonny know that? That's a good question, right? Like, how does Sonny know that happened? By what has been said by various sources that were there at the time, I would say he was very angry about it. So Sonny has no idea because various sources have told him, and he doesn't know what's true and what's not. He didn't think he had a problem, so he was in total denial. Now, as we've looked at and discussed, he was probably in a whole lot of pain. Elvis was in a lot of pain, and he was taking these drugs to try to control the pain, to try to sleep, to try to get up, to, as Sonny says, to use the bathroom. So I don't know if Sonny was hoping that he would stop taking the pills that helped him use the bathroom and stop going to it, but that's what he's using these pills for. So those are medical issues. And so I don't know that he was in total denial. I think it was maybe Sonny that was in total denial. And Roy is saying that Billy said he cried that night over the book. Should I weight heavy on his heart, man? Come on. It definitely hurt Elvis. I mean, there's no doubt about it. No doubt. And I'm sure it hurt him to let them go in the first place. These people were his brothers. And he loved them like brothers. And things happen. But we don't know what that thing was. And that's what we're trying to get to. And then they asked this last question. And this is another great question that's about another book that caused people in the fan base to be upset. And that is Albert Goldman's Elvis. And he's asked, what can you say about this book and your participation in it? Because Sonny, I believe, took money for an interview that he gave to Albert Goldman. And Albert Goldman used that interview in the book, but he didn't change any of the interview. Now, what Sonny alleges is that other people's stuff was changed, but his wasn't, so he didn't have a problem with Albert. But Albert said some terrible, terrible things about Elvis. And the reason that Sonny participated in the book and was, and I don't know that he got paid. I haven't seen any proof of it at this point. I don't know. But Lamar was working on the book. And Lamar was definitely working on the book because he was getting paid. So it seems unlikely that he brought any of the guys in without them getting some kind of remuneration, at least for the day that they spent doing the interview. And so what Sonny actually says is, I was very angry and upset over that book. Lamar asked me to do an interview with Albert Goldman, who was writing it. I had no idea that it was going to be the kind of book it turned out to be. When I saw the excerpts of it prior to its release, I went and got the copy off my bookcase that he had sent signed to me a few weeks earlier and looked at the index. I was looking to check the pages where my name was either mentioned or it said something. I wanted to see if he had associated my name with some of the things he had written. He had not. He had asked questions of me in the interviews that I said I didn't want to comment on. He said, okay, and went on with the interview. So basically, he's saying that here he participated in another book. They sent him a copy of the book. He didn't bother to read it, right? He just sits it on the shelf and then finds out later, oh, this book says a lot of bad things and my name's in it. So he looks up to see if his name is associated with the things that Goldman wrote. Well, guess what? It is, because it's in the book that Goldman wrote. But Sonny feels that because there are pages that separate what Goldman wrote and what he wrote about what Sonny said, that he hasn't himself been compromised by what Goldman said. So it's just an interesting view of something that happens a little bit later in the timeline. We'll eventually get to Goldman's book. Jane saying that she doesn't trust Billy Smith. I don't know that Billy's told various versions of different stories, and they're going to start popping up, and we'll be able to make a better determination about Billy. And Roy said that I think Sonny and Red were brothers. I don't know what went on in your family, but they look at all alike. So Sonny and Red were cousins. They were, I think, first cousins. And Dave was unrelated to all of them. And of course, nobody was Elvis's brother, right? Elvis didn't have a brother. He had 3 stepbrothers, but Elvis viewed Red and Sonny and Dave as brothers. They were his closest brothers, and he trusted them with his life. And they apparently protected his life many times. And something happened between 73, 74, and 76. And it all spiraled out of control and led to the end, and broke that long relationship that they had. And that's what I mean by brothers. Although I think you might just be being facetious, so it's all good. And then even Billy, Roy's saying that even Billy and Joe said they wrote the book out of revenge. Well, yeah, and they said it themselves. It's not a, and they it's in earlier episodes that we looked at. It's not a secret. They did it out of revenge. But we get to close that chapter for a few minutes. Unfortunately, they are going to pop up again within the story, but we get to move away from Elvis What Happened for a little while, and we're going to look at some different stuff, so hopefully some more fun stuff. And we're going to start with one of our favorite things, television broadcast. So if somebody can let me know that they're hearing this, I will really appreciate it if you just drop it in the comments.
Posed at his mansion in Memphis. Crowds began gathering outside the Presley mansion last night, shortly after the announcement that the 42-year-old entertainer had died of heart trouble. The gates were opened at 4 o'clock to allow the Presley faithful to view the body. After all the hours of waiting, most of the fans were allowed but a few seconds to get a glimpse of Elvis, and then were forced to move on.
So hopefully you guys are able to hear the audio that's on here. I'm always wondering about these audio settings, but this is the day that August 17th, the day after. We're still in the middle of it here. And this is, oh, thank you so much, guys. Regina, thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Jane and Terry, thank you so much for letting me know you can hear it. This is the day that everybody's going to get to file in and see the body in the foyer. So if you've ever been to Graceland, it's right there. Now, we looked at some pictures of what it looked like in a much earlier episode where you could see the red decor. So if you didn't see that episode and you're new here, definitely head back into the archive because you want to see what it looked like when people actually walk through. And Roy's saying that he really enjoys all the videos I've produced. Thank you so much, Roy. I really appreciate that. And our fictional fan, Joyce, and her friends, they're somewhere out in this crowd. They've left her house. They've come here. They are part of this while it's being filmed.
The crowd at the Graceland Mansion was so large that nearly 50 people, overcome in the crunch, required emergency treatment, some of them taken away in ambulances. Just a short time ago, gates at the Presley Mansion were closed, and the lid of his steel-lined coffin closed to await burial tomorrow. At this hour, people in Portland, Maine would have been filing into the Civic Center to attend the first of a two-night Presley concert. Jorge Quiroga was in Portland today. He has this story.
It was ironic that as we drove into Portland...
So this story again negates what Ronna Barrett said about Elvis was a recluse, didn't even really know if he was going to be doing another tour. Obviously he did. This was going to be the first show.
In Maine, the site of Elvis Presley's first concert stop on his new tour, That You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog was playing on the radio. The song that put Elvis on the map announced to us the bereavement that Portland felt over his death. Ticket demand for Elvis Presley's concert had been so tremendous that a second concert had to be arranged. It sold out as quickly as the first one had. The set was getting its final touches, and the fifth floor of a local hotel was being prepared to receive the Presley entourage when the news of his death was announced in Portland.
Was the immediate and disbelief. We checked it out from all possible angles, not only locally but nationally, to see if the story was true, because we had been talking to the Presley people. They were ready to come into the building. We were expecting him. It was the eve of the performance, and his people were already in town. We had just sold out 2 shows to over 17,000 people. I stood in line for 2 nights, sleeping over.
17,000 people in 2 shows. We're going to see Elvis in Portland, Maine. Already got their tickets. Sold out. And this is the guy that knew all about it because he was handling all those kind of sales. He was in charge of a lot of this. So he knows what he's talking about. And Roy's saying that his mother had red carpet in the house that he grew up in, just like Elvis. That's cool. I know it was definitely an unusual color at the time, but very 70s.
And the whole thing was just hard to believe.
In Portland, like in every other city and town across the United States, Elvis Presley was a true working-class hero. They looked up to him as the realization of the American dream.
Elvis is just not the music with me. It's him. He set an example to me, the way he lived, his clean living, the way he used people, his sincerity, his honesty, his manners, the way he treated his mother. To me, he was a person.
So there's a fan right there, not a middle-aged woman, who's telling you how he feels that Elvis is gone. He's a fan too. It's not just middle-aged women. And right here, we see a guy in a record store with a beard. He's not a middle-aged woman either.
Presley's fans were aware that the man was a multimillionaire. That fact never affected their loyalty. From rags to riches, they said, but he never thought he was better than any of us. In Portland, they were just grateful that he had agreed to play their town.
I was a kid. You were my favorite idol. I had all you met. And I mean today that I would get a chance to meet it.
This is going to be your first time to see him? The dream of a lifetime?
Yeah. I say it what?
You were probably a big fan. Sitting in this empty arena.
And that guy was not the only guy or the only fan who was going to see Elvis for the first time at the Portland Arena. There's a lot of those stories out there. Or that they had a ticket to a later show within the same tour, but they weren't going to get to see him. But it was the first time that they were going to see Elvis. And obviously that guy, not a middle-aged woman, very affected by Elvis's passing. And Angie's saying that was such a sweet, poor guy. And Jane's saying that Elvis had a lot of fans, women and men and children. Right. So when you see these newspaper reports that it's mostly middle-aged women, I just wonder if that's really true, or if maybe they were just the first to run out and get the records. Hi, Angie. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate having you here.
Just hours before Elvis Presley was scheduled to perform. One can imagine the mass hysteria that would have been upon Elvis Presley's arrival. Now with his death, the silence gives you a feeling of mourning. Many people will never understand the loyalty and identification of a fan to an artist. But I'm sure that as many fans throughout the world will agree with me when I say, Elvis Presley is dead. Long live the king. For News 5, I'm Jorge Quiroga in Portland, Maine.
Another stop on the Presley tour was to have been Hartford, Connecticut. The Civic Center there set up a refund booth this morning, but didn't do much business. Most people kept their tickets, apparently as souvenirs. And as for those who wanted their money back, there were plenty of eager customers offering to buy those tickets for a performance that would never be. For some, it was a sign of their love for Elvis. For others, it was an investment. Pose at his mansion.
So I thought that was an interesting set of clips. And that people, they weren't really trying to get refunds for these tickets. They're keeping them, or they're selling them, or, other people want them. And Roy's saying that nobody asked for a refund for his tickets. First time in history. Yeah, I think maybe so. That, these people, that, especially the ones that didn't get to see him, that was the last link. Hi, Angel. Thank you so much for coming. You're not too late. We've still got about half a show to go, so we still got a lot of good stuff. So let's switch on over. And get to my next piece here. So this is a picture of Elvis. Well, before we start, there's a picture of Elvis on the screen. It's in 1977, because this is part of a larger picture, and Ginger Alden is in the picture. So we know that it's either very late 1976 or 1977. So I believe this is like January, February. I don't have the exact date on this one. I could probably find it, but it's not really important. What is important is that Sam and Elvis are together. And the story that I'm going to tell you now is about Sam and Elvis. So Joyce and her friends have gone back to her house, and another few Elvis fans have shown up, and they got some more pictures. You know, these Elvis fans all across the country, they're sending each other what little pieces they have. And some of them are trying to solve the mystery of August 16th, 1977, just like Joyce. So they've gotten a hold of this piece, and they send it. Let me pull it up here. So one of the pictures is this one of Elvis at a concert in a blue suit that they called the Lucky Suit. And what's important about this picture is that he's wearing a ring, a very large ring. So it may be hard for some of you to see that ring, but if you're able to zoom in on the picture or you're on a big screen, you should be able to see that he's got this ring on. And yeah, in this, Jane's saying that he looks great here, not bloated. And I don't know which picture, but the first picture, yeah, he'd really look great for 77 or even late 76. And in this blue one, which again, I don't know what the date is, he looks fantastic, right? Like he looks fantastic. But the important part of the story is the ring, which is a 22 karat. So it's kind of unusual because it's not 24 karat. But it's a 22 karat yellow gold ring with a large 18.5 millimeter black star sapphire. It's size 10.5 and it weighs 16.5 grams. So it's kind of heavy. It was worn by Elvis on stage during a 1972 concert paired with the blue Lucky Suit. So this is 1972. And on August 7th, 1977, 9 days prior to when Elvis passed away, and Jane saying she was talking about the first one, but I bet you like this one too, Jane, right? And on August 7th, 1977, these are words that are directly from Sam. So I'm going to quote Sam Thompson now. On August 7th, 1977, Elvis rented Liberty Land Amusement Park in Memphis as a gift for his daughter, Lisa Marie. That night, while riding the wooden roller coaster, Elvis called me over and he handed me a ring for safekeeping. He said he didn't want to lose it on the ride. Later, when I tried to return the ring, he just smiled, told me to keep it. So that's the story. 9 days before Elvis passed away, they went to Liberty Land, so he's not a recluse. Again, we see it here. He went to Liberty Land with a bunch of people, and he rode the roller coaster. And he handed his ring over to Sam so that it would be kept safe. And Jane's saying 100% she likes this picture. Now, what's really important about this ring? It's that Elvis gifted it to Sam. Elvis didn't just have Sam hold it. Elvis gifted it to Sam because it's a very special ring. It is a black star sapphire, or what you could call a black hole sun. Okay, nobody called it that back then, but they did call them black star sapphires. But a star is a sun, right? And it's black, basically like it's sucking the light in instead of sending it out. And this is a picture of the ring, but it needs a light to shine on it correctly to actually show the beauty of the ring. And that did not happen in this picture. So let me just talk about black star sapphires for a second. They're stones of anchoring, protection, and intuitive clarity. And Elvis really found himself drawn to Black Star sapphires. And he bought and gifted a boatload of these Black Star sapphires. And one day I'm going to get into telling you all about them. Angel's saying that her birthstone is sapphire, but now she wants one of these. And they're special. And Elvis knew it, and that's why he liked them. They have connections to grounding and shielding. They stabilize emotional turbulence and ward off psychic interference. Now, you have to believe in what people believe about these stones to believe this, but Elvis did have a special relationship with numbers and stones and feelings, emotions. It's also connected to wisdom and discernment, said to sharpen judgment and enhance insight, especially during chaotic or transitional times. And we saw Elvis practice those skills from time to time. Faith in self. It encourages one to trust one's instincts, even when the world feels unstable. And Angie's saying that it's a very cool ring and information. Thank you, Angie. I really appreciate that. And it's also a stone that's connected to creative manifestation. It's a stone for turning vision into reality, especially when under pressure or uncertainty. Its star emerges only when it's cut into a dome, which this one is, but you can't really see it in the picture. And it reveals a golden cross of light when it has the light hit it correctly. And that star is a kind of cosmic compass or a beacon in the void. Okay, and all these things are true about Black Star sapphires, or people believe them to be true, and that's why they're sought after and they're valuable. And Lowell Hayes, who was one of Elvis's jewelers, I'm sure you all know Lowell, he confirmed that these Black Star sapphires were his favorite. And Alan Fortas once said that Elvis believed, and Alan Fortas was a member of the Memphis Mafia, and he was a good friend of Elvis's. And a lot of the clothes that Elvis wears in the 1960s were purchased by Alan. He would buy clothes in multiples, like the same shirt, like 4 or 5 of it, because he knew Elvis would like this particular shirt. And he did almost all of Elvis's clothes buying during that period. Elvis gifted, what Alan Fortas said about these sapphires that Elvis believed was that they signified generosity, good manners, wisdom, and noble thoughts. And Colleen's saying that she's also a sapphire, but would love to have any of Elvis's rings. Of course, everybody, like I would too, right? Roy is saying that I thought it was a mood ring in the 4 maps alongside question. Yeah, not a mood ring, Black Star sapphire. And Angie's saying that the ring says a lot about Elvis. And Colleen's saying size 10.5 is a good size for a pinky. And so, yeah, although it looked to me like Elvis was wearing that on his ring finger, but I don't know if it's ever been resized since Elvis had it. And Elvis would give these rings, he gave all gifts for a purpose. And some of them were for loyalty, like they increased people's loyalty, or they kept people tied to him, people that he wanted around. They were symbols of his gratitude, of his generosity, of his love. But they were also, in some cases, especially these ones that he thought were very special, they were like protective amulets. He was giving you a symbol of his protection. And it may have not come with true mystic protection, but it was a symbol that in need, you could come to him for his protection. An angel saying that when it's in a different angle, there looks like a star in the middle. Exactly. This is just a very bad picture of it. And of course, it's a symbol of loyalty because he's given it to his bodyguard and the brother of Linda, even though he's no longer with Linda. And the black stone is a mirror of himself. You know, Elvis was like a black star. You couldn't see into his middle. I've compared him many times to a diamond, and he was too bright to see into the middle of, but he was also a black star. He was mysterious inside, but there was light, and it shone out. And one of the ways it shone out was that he gave these black stars to many people to connect them to him in one giant circle. So I thought you guys would find that interesting about the black star and this particular gift, which happened just a few days before he passed away. And it's another sign and another symbol that these things that they were saying about Elvis, that he was a recluse, that he never left the house, that he couldn't go out in public, all not true. Because when he gave this ring to Sam, they were out at Liberty Land. Now, true, he was controlling who could get in and out, but he was in public. He was with a bunch of people. He was having fun. He was not a recluse. So now let's look at another special piece I have for you. And we're going to move overnight. Joyce has now been able to sleep and process what's happened on that day, or maybe not process it fully, but she's taken in as much as she can. And she knows that the funeral is the following day. And so now we're into that following day, and we're going to see some news coverage from it.
Estimated 10,000 people from all sections of the country assembled at Presley's compound, Graceland Mansion, for his public viewing. All had come for very personal reasons.
I consider Elvis a part of my life from childhood through my teen years and my adult life, and I feel a part of it's gone now.
I think I've been in love with Elvis Presley since I was 14, and I used to sit and calculate if he was too old for me or not. And besides that, I think Elvis had more impact on our society than any other popular musician, except perhaps the Beatles, and the Beatles were English, not American.
Presley had been hospitalized several times in recent years for ailments generally diagnosed as fatigue and intestinal disorders. His weight was an increasing problem, but none of his associates believed him to be an ill health or a drug user. News of his death jammed telephone lines in Memphis. Florists were unable to keep up with orders that came from Europe, Asia, and Africa. Certainly some of those who came to Memphis were motivated by curiosity, but as the heat intensified, the crowd still grew, and police were faced with another problem. Untold dozens of people fainted in the thick jam of people. It was often difficult to extricate them from the crowd. Finally, after some had waited as long as 14 hours, the crowd was allowed into Graceland Mansion to view his body. Cameras were not permitted. The bier was in an all-white, dimly lit foyer. Presley was dressed in white. Friends and relatives were assembled to one side. And it's clear that the public's reaction to the death of the dream of Elvis Presley will not end tonight. Ron Miller, ABC News, Memphis.
Presley was to have launched a nationwide tour tonight at the Civic Center in Portland, Maine. But today the hall was empty except for some occasional fans who wandered in, some of them talking about the possibility of pooling refunds from their tickets for a donation in memory of the singer. The center's executive director said officials are looking into the possibility of staging a memorial tribute to Elvis Friday night. In the meantime, most of those who had tickets for tonight's canceled performance said they would hold on to them as a remembrance.
Funeral services for Elvis Presley were held this afternoon. At his Memphis mansion. Those services were marred by a bizarre.
So I realized I was on mute while I was talking there, but Jane saying that poor Lisa, when I read her book, it's so sad. Her watching people looking at Elvis, so sad. Yeah, but I also want to point out that Priscilla was there. She had arrived by this point, so whatever was going on that day, Priscilla was there and could handle, or should have been in charge of Lisa. And Colleen saying that she was 9 when Elvis passed, which was exactly like Lisa Marie, right? So that's very interesting. But I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was like we lost a close family member. And so, Colleen, your memories, although we can't compare them directly to Lisa's, if you remember it still, she must have remembered like almost every moment.
Bizarre accident earlier today. About 3:45 this morning, 2 teenage girls were killed when a car drove through the crowd outside the mansion. Another teenager was hit and is now reported in critical condition. Police gave chase and arrested the driver and 3 juvenile girls. The driver has been charged with second-degree murder, drunk driving, leaving the scene of an accident, and reckless driving. The juveniles were charged with being accessories.
So now we've got people that have been hit and killed outside of Graceland as they were grieving for Elvis, which is just a terrible, terrible tragedy. And if you go over to the Spa Guys channel, you can find a lot more about that story. And he actually found the people that were involved in the accident, the ones, I think that, if I remember correctly, it's a woman who was with the 2 that were struck. And I can't remember exactly, but I know he's got that story up. So if you go search for Spa Guy, it's probably August 18th or 19th, August 17th or 18th, 1977. I'm sure it'll pop up.
Presley was laid to rest in a marble mausoleum in Memphis, Tennessee today after a private funeral attended.
And Jane saying that she was 10 when Elvis passed and Angel was 13. I was 4, so I don't really remember any of it myself. I remember some of the early remembrances, especially around 1980 or 81, but I do not remember 77.
By 200 mourners, including his family, show business friends, and associates. Thousands of his fans crowded around the Presley mansion and lined the street leading to the cemetery in an emotional final tribute to the singer who died Tuesday of heart failure. ABC's Charles Murphy with the story.
They knew they wouldn't get inside the mansion for the funeral, but Elvis's fans came anyway and waited for hours. They came from all over the United States. Most of them were young women. In the heat and excitement, a number fainted. The funeral, preached by television minister Rex Humbard, lasted more than an hour. Finally, the hearse bearing Presley's coffin wound down the driveway of Graceland onto Elvis Presley Boulevard. It was a white cortege, a white hearse, and 10 white Cadillacs. Elvis loved Cadillacs. He had a dozen himself. The cemetery was closed to the public, too, but still many people stood outside in the hot sun to see the hearse go by and to say that they had been here.
You love Elvis?
We still do.
You're not going to get in, you know.
Doesn't make any difference.
The call
doesn't make any difference. She was still there.
coffin was carried by Presley's closest friends and business associates. Besides family, mourners included a number of show business personalities who counted themselves friends too. Charles Murphy, ABC News, Memphis.
Earlier in the day, a young driver plowed his car into a crowd of mourners outside the Presley home. 2 teenage girls were killed and a third critically injured. The driver is being held without bond. The boss paid the...
That was the end of that clip. Another interesting one, though, I thought, and brings us into the day of the funeral, which we'll be covering in a lot more depth as we go through the next several episodes. We did not get to Charlie Hodge today, who I had teased on the thumbnail. Do have a great Charlie Hodge story coming up that's connected right to these days. So I know you guys are going to want to hear that. In the next episode, I've also got some interesting stuff coming up about Elvis items, Elvis possessions that are disappearing from Graceland. And I don't know exactly when these items disappeared, but at some point they walked away, and there's no real clear indication of how they did it. And we're going to look at one of the first ones tomorrow. And another interview with our friend Steve Dunleavy, because he's still out there and he's doing the rounds, and no matter who says what from the medical community, Steve's not going to stop until he sells more of these books so that he can write more new books. And Jane saying that Anne Margaret would not have left Elvis, or would not leave Elvis. And so we are going to see some stuff about Anne Margaret. Won't be in the next one, but it is coming up because she is at this funeral. She and her husband, as well as a lot of other celebrities, including a Kennedy, Caroline Kennedy, who people thought was there because she was representing the Kennedys for Elvis's death, but that was not true. She was there to get a story for the Rolling Stone. We're going to look at that story, and it's coming up soon. But for now, I'm going to let you guys all go. And until I see you again, I'm going to say, everybody keep on taking care of business.